Trying not to think of a pink elephant is a common example that shows how hard it is to avoid certain thoughts. When we try to not think about a pink elephant, it appears in our minds. The more we try to get rid of it, the more it sticks around. This shows how hard it can be to push away unwanted thoughts using only willpower. We can also use the pink elephant example to understand how we deal with dissatisfaction in life. Here, the pink elephant represents our general feelings of unhappiness, which can show up as sadness, stress, anger, or boredom. Ironically, the more we try to stop feeling dissatisfied, the more dissatisfied we become. This suggests that our strong effort to be happy or content might be the very reason we aren't. This idea is known as the law of reversed effort, or the backwards law, a concept discussed by philosopher Alan Watts. According to the backwards law, the more we chase after something, the more we get the opposite of what we want, leading to more disappointment. In simpler terms, the harder we try, the less likely we are to succeed. On the other hand, when we stop trying so hard, we often get what we want. So, if we want to stop thinking about the pink elephant, which represents our dissatisfaction, the paradoxical solution is to give up the struggle and let go of our desire to get rid of it. Instead of trying to force the elephant out of our minds, we let it fade away on its own by not focusing on it. How does the backwards law work in real life? How can we get what we want by not trying to get it? This approach might seem impossible or absurd, especially in a world where we are taught to work hard and put in effort to achieve our goals. Willpower and effort are indeed necessary for getting external things, like money or physical achievements. For example, to become rich, one usually has to work hard to earn a lot of money. Similarly, running a marathon requires training and effort to build up the necessary stamina. However, the backwards law isn't about these kinds of worldly achievements. It goes beyond them, focusing on what we truly want deep down. It's a shortcut to the ultimate desire, the holy grail of human longing. But what is this ultimate desire? Is it wealth, love, friendship, or a long and healthy life? While these things are nice and desirable, they are often just steps we believe will lead us to our true goal. Yet, as the backwards law suggests, the more we chase these external things, the further we get from what we really want. The more we seek, the less we find. So what we need to do is change our focus from always striving to a state of acceptance and letting go. Instead of always trying to be happy, we let happiness come to us by accepting the present moment and things as they are. In practice, this means adopting a mindset of not resisting. When negative emotions or dissatisfaction come up, we don't fight them or try to force them away. Instead, we acknowledge them and let them be. This helps to weaken their hold on us. Similarly, when we stop obsessing over achieving happiness or contentment, we make space for these feelings to come naturally. The backwards law teaches us that trying too hard to be happy and satisfied often leads to the opposite result. By letting go of our intense efforts and accepting things as they are, we can find what we truly want. This doesn't mean giving up all goals or efforts, but rather changing our approach to one of acceptance and not resisting, allowing true contentment to naturally come into our lives. What do we really desire? Is it happiness? And if so, what exactly is happiness? Is it something we obtain through love and material possessions? Alan Watts suggests that we don't truly know what we want because we cannot define it. He explains, "Why don't you really know what you want?" There are two reasons. First, you already have it. Second, you don't know yourself because you never can. The Godhead is never an object of its own knowledge, just as a knife doesn't cut itself, fire doesn't burn itself, light doesn't illuminate itself. Could it be that our search for what we seek is what obscures it? Are we searching for something that we can't define? If so, why do we keep searching? We have a sense of lack. This collective human delusion tells us that acquiring external things or changing our circumstances, whether it's getting objects, money, body changes, or different scenery, will fundamentally free us from this sense of lack. However, the backwards law suggests the opposite is true. We feel lacking because we are discontent with our current circumstances. The more discontent we are, the more we suffer. The more we feel we need to change to be content, the less content we are. For example, imagine you set a goal to become a millionaire, believing that this will make you happy. This goal means it takes a lot of effort to reach contentment, and being far from that goal makes you unhappy because you feel inadequate compared to what you want to be. Best-selling author Manson puts it this way: pursuing something only reinforces the fact that you lack it in the first place. The more you desperately want to be rich, the poorer and more unworthy you feel, regardless of how much money you actually make. If you raise the amount of money you think you need to be happy, you'll feel even more inadequate and miserable. But if you lower that threshold significantly, your feeling of inadequacy will decrease because the goal is much closer to where you are now. Despite this, we often choose to set high goals, far above our current position, and by doing so, we deepen and prolong our sense of inadequacy. The human tendency to continuously seek more as a solution to our dissatisfaction, while at the same time perpetuating that dissatisfaction through this very pursuit, seems illogical. German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer addresses this paradox. He concluded that our desires arise because we are representations of the will to live, or simply, the will. Schopenhauer argued that the will is an illogical, directionless, and perpetual striving that causes us to live in a state of suffering that nothing in the world can alleviate. As a result, we are pathologically driven to want more than we need, spurred by an incessant sense of lack. The mind perceives lack because it believes the present moment is insufficient. Something is missing, but it doesn't know what. Thus, we keep escaping our current reality, seeking situations we believe will be more pleasurable. However, when we achieve these situations, we often find ourselves back in the same state of dissatisfaction we tried to escape. Schopenhauer said, "Thus also every keen pleasure is an error and an illusion, for no attained wish can give lasting satisfaction." According to Schopenhauer, the will is why we strive and why we seek. But following it never satisfies, because the will itself is what keeps us from getting what we truly want. He argued that the only way to be truly content is to negate the will, leading to a blissful, empty state, free from striving. In other words, stop trying to get it, and you'll have it. Alan Watts provides insight into this idea. He explained, "When you try to stay on the surface of the water, you sink, but when you try to sink, you float. Similarly, when you try to fall asleep, your effort keeps you awake. Only when you stop trying do you fall asleep. When you hold your breath, you lose it. But when you let it go, it continues on its own. When we stop trying to be happy, we'll be happy because we no longer need anything beyond what is. When we stop trying to be rich, we'll live in abundance because we're content with what we have. And anything extra is a bonus. Thus, the only way to have what we want is not to want it." This is the essence of the backwards law. A Zen story illustrates this paradoxical idea by explaining how we can clear cloudy water. Imagine a pond with cloudy water, and you want to see its floor. You can stir the water or try to remove the cloudiness with your hands, but this won't work. The only way to see the floor is by doing nothing until the cloudiness subsides and the water becomes clear. The cloudiness represents our desires, thoughts, and dissatisfaction. Stirring the water or trying to remove the cloudiness represents our grasping for happiness. Seeing the floor represents contentment, which only happens when we leave the water alone and let the cloudiness settle on its own. Being aware of the backwards law doesn't mean we should never set goals, have ambitions, or pursue change. There are many valid reasons to seek change and not accept the status quo. However, the backwards law teaches us not to be deceived into thinking that the pursuit of happiness leads to happiness. It's quite the opposite. With this understanding, we can enter that blissful state of not wanting more often. As Alan Watts said, the mystery of life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced.